All righty. Well, welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a good break. I am Tony Vetta. My pronouns are he, him, and I am the president and CEO of the North Texas LGBT Chamber of Commerce. And I am very excited to be here to introduce our moderator for our next panel, which is LGBTQ plus ERGs, Making an Impact. And we're going to be moderated by Millicent Rone from American Airlines. She is a diversity, equity, and inclusion senior specialist. And I was reading over her bio last night, and I decided I wanted to go backwards and start with her favorite quote. And I love that it's from K. Harris. I'm going to assuming that's Kamala Harris. But the quote is, "Our unity is our strength, and diversity is our power." I thought, oh my God, that is just so good. And of course, our wonderful vice president says a lot of really good stuff. So thank you for including that on your bio. So, I hate reading bios, but I'm going to do it anyhow because Millicent has written so succinctly that if I do anything else, just like now, I'm going to be wasting time. So Millicent, she's been with American Airlines for 8 years, serves as a senior specialist for the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. She's a passionate motivator for change, an ally for all cultures, and an advocate for social justice. In her role, Millicent provides strategic oversight and management of Americans' 20 employee business resource groups, or EBRGs, that span and influence of her, the span of influence in her role reaches across 149 global chapters and 28,623 team members who make up the EBRGs in the company. I just got exhausted when I read the numbers. So that is a lot for one person to manage. So kudos to you. She holds a master's in business administration with an emphasis in management, and her business acumen is reflective of 26 years in project management in information technology across multiple industries such as retail, oil and gas, healthcare, food, and beverage. Now, that should be enough, but she also has an outside life. So outside of work, Millicent is a founding member of the newly established DFW, Collective of Black Employee Resource Groups. That sounds a lot like what we're doing here, so good for you. Their mission is to create a community focus on amplifying the collective voice of Black resource groups in the DFW Metroplex. They provide a space for cross-company collaboration, sharing of best practices, networking, and community engagement. But wait, there's more. Millicent is a wife, a mother of 3, and you're not going to believe this, a grandmother of 4. She loves history, traveling, and meeting new people and exploring new cultures. And with that, I give you Millicent Rone. Millicent, take it away.
Thank you so much, Tony, for that introduction, and an extended thank you to the Texas LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce for hosting this LGBTQ Alliance Summit. Good morning to everyone, and thank you for being with us today to have this important conversation about the impact of LGBTQ plus ERGs. I am sure that this conversation will stimulate and generate great questions, and we'll address those questions at the end of today's presentation. So please utilize the Q&A feature to ask your questions. So joining me today are 3 dynamic leaders in this space. So let me introduce to you Casey Meadows. He is a native Texan. He also is a global HR analyst for Google. He's a part of the Google's Texas Community Ambassador Program to several nonprofits, including Austin's LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce. And in partnership with Austin's LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce and the Spark Equity in Action, Casey is also a co-creator of the Erg Builders Box, which is a resource for creating resource groups for historically marginalized and underrepresented communities in the U.S. We welcome you, Casey. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to introduce to you Clay Melder. He is a commercial relationship manager for Amegy Banks, corporate healthcare, and not-for-profit division. Clay is also the chairman of Amegy's LGBTQ plus business resource group and Allies, and serves on the Diversity Council for the bank. He is a member of the Big Brother, Big Sisters organization, a devoted partner and uncle. This is what I found very interesting about Casey. This is Casey and Clay. I mean, out of all of the panelists, this one said that he's an animal enthusiast and has several different types of animals in his home. So during our networking, we're going to have a conversation, Clay, about that. So I can understand your animals that you have. He enjoys playing the piano and visiting his family in Central America. And today we welcome you, Clay. Also, I would like to introduce to you Javier Moreno. And Javier is the National Marketing Manager for Toyota Financial Services, headquartered here at Plano. He's responsible for leading marketing communication efforts across the enterprise, as well as managing the incentive and recognition programs for Toyota and Lexus dealers. Moreno serves as the Vice Chair of Spectrum, Toyota's LGBTQ plus ERG. And in 2013, PR News named Moreno as on its annual list of 30 under 30 people to watch. In 2015, he was one of the only 12 prominent Penn State alumni, 35 years of age and younger, to receive the university's Alumni Achievement Award. And prior to joining Toyota, Moreno served as the national president for the Future Farmers of America, a national organization of 700,000 members, preparing leadership and careers in science, business, and technology and agriculture. Moreno was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and currently resides in Dallas. And we welcome Javier. And so I want to make sure before we get started, we know that Javier was experiencing some technical difficulties, and so he may not be on the panel today. So we're going to make an adjustment, and we're going to adjust our questions so that we can get started. So without further ado, let's jump right in. And we'll start with you, Clay, on this question. Can you give us an overview of your company's LGBTQ ERG?
Absolutely. And before I get to that, I did want to thank everybody for getting me involved today and for the invitation to be on the panel, and especially Tammy Wallace with the Greater Houston LGBT Chamber, who we have a close partnership with, and it's an honor to be here. So thank you for that. So an overview of our BRG with Amegy Bank. Amegy launched the Business Resource Group, I guess you could say, initiative within DEI in 2014. And we all funnel through our diversity officer, Brenda Cooper. And we actually started our BRG. Our initial chairs, Robert Hahn and Catherine Doika Morse, are the founding fathers, you could say, of our BRG, and they get launched it in 2016. And so we're one of the younger business resource groups in the bank. And we're actually broken into subcommittees, and each subcommittee has a chair and a co-chair. And so myself as the chair of the entire BRG, and then I have a co-chair whose name is Ken Jacobs. And then we have a marketplace, workforce, and workplace committee that are kind of the umbrellas under our BRG, and each have a chair and a co-chair. Each of those committees have different areas of focus, and marketplace focuses mainly on business development and volunteering, and then workforce focuses heavily on outreach and recruitment. And then workplace, I feel like they really have a busy schedule because they were focused on development and engagement, which are two really big undertakings. And we also have within our group, we participate in Pride Fest every year, minus COVID times. And so we put together a Pride committee just to kind of help with that duty and undertaking, because it can be pretty overwhelming if not. And so that's just kind of a high level overview of what our BRG looks like.
Outstanding, Clay. Thank you for sharing that. And Casey, how about you? Can you give us an overview of your company's ERG?
Yeah, I'd love to. So here at Google, our LGBTQ plus ERG is called Pride At. And so Pride At is really a collection of local and national chapters of ERGs, really oriented around just addressing the workplace needs of the LGBTQIA2 plus community globally. So we also are really interested in discovering opportunities to give back to local communities where we have offices. And so really my focus has been around Austin. Over the pandemic, we really monitored membership in this virtual only phase via folks who are subscribed to our Austin Pride At email alias. We can probably say that within the Austin area, we have about 300 members, and we're also continuing to grow as our office expands as well. But similar to what Clay was saying, we oftentimes are really structured around what we seek to achieve in the communities that we're based. But we typically let this flex a little bit depending on the local community and really what is important to the employees in that location, just because things can vary very differently from, if I'm in Singapore versus if I'm in Texas. So oftentimes we will have like a pride pillar, we'll have a community outreach pillar, we'll have like a learning and development pillar where we can also focus on mentoring employees and helping them to rise up through their careers within the company as well. So it always depends a little bit on how exactly that may look, but we're ultimately here to help serve the employees and continue to grow Google in a really positive way.
Yes, thank you, Casey, for that. And thank you for both of you providing overviews of your ERGs. They seem to be very structured and being able to be supportive for our team members that are in your company, in your organization. They touch the community. And a lot of these intersectionalities we'll see throughout our conversation exist in multiple organizations. And so it's good to see that we are foundationally set up upon the same pillars for the most part. Being a leader in the ERG space is very rewarding and offers substantial amount of visibility. So I'm going to go to you, Casey, this time. Can you tell us how long you've been a leader for your ERG and share your path to how you got to this role?
Yeah. So I guess first I have to clarify that I'm no longer the lead for the Pride at ERG here in Austin. However, I was a leader from about 2015 all the way through to early 2020. At that point, I realized that, I had plenty of time under my belt and experiencing what it felt like to be a leader in that space and really helping to lead us through a big growth period. But I wanted to pass the reins off and let other people experience what that leadership means and how they can also further their own career development through that leadership opportunity. And so I passed off the torch in early 2020, but then, everything shifted with a pandemic. It was right before all that took off. So I really spent the last 2 years working with the new co-leads to help them navigate, everything from budget to community engagement in a virtual setting. But now, like you mentioned, Millicent, I act as the community ambassador for Google in Texas. I'm primarily focused on formal collaborations with the LGBTQ, with different LGBTQ organizations such as the Austin LGBT Chamber of Commerce or Out Youth and other nonprofits that are really working to promote a more equitable and caring world just for queer folks in Texas in general. But, my path to this really had, its own unexpected twists and turns. Initially, whenever I first joined Google, it was in the Austin office and it was super tiny. Like we took up, half of a floor in a building that didn't even have our name on the top of it. So it really was coming from a place where we didn't have much of an ERG. And the one that we had was really just focused on, maybe we bring in a drag queen for lunch during Pride Month, but there was no real focus on, like how do we build up and empower employees? But that lead ended up getting an opportunity in another office. And so he moved out and just kind of opened up and said, I'm looking for someone to take my spot. Is anyone willing? And I had another one of my colleagues decided that was going to be a place that we really wanted to step up. And we were able to really take advantage of that opportunity with the real intent of looking at how do we increase workplace visibility for queer folks, especially in a place like Texas, where, it's really important that queer folks can be visible and we can create that space for others to know that they can not only show up and be their full self at work, but they can also be successful in whatever they seek to achieve in the workplace. And so, yeah, like I said, I've spent a couple of years really in that ERG space and being able to pivot to getting to work now with the external community as well, kind of in that, not my full-time role, but really is kind of like that full-time, outward looking perspective of my role has been really rewarding. And I just am continuing to look for new ways that we can always partner with the local community.
Awesome. And I'm going to stay with you for just a moment and expand, and then Clay, we'll come to you and I'll do the same expansion. But I really, why motivates us to do this work for our companies and to expand upon doing it also for the community. And you kind of touched on it a little bit, but can you elaborate a little bit more? What is your personal why, Casey? What is it for you that makes you motivated to do this work?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it personally means a lot to me to be able to be myself at work. Work is like I said, one of the places in our lives where, as Americans, we tend to spend more time here than any other area of our life, such as sleeping in a lot of cases, or, even spending time with family and friends. And so I think it's really essential that we don't have to hide who we are. when we are in the workplace. And so for me, that meant taking the leadership skills that I had and applying them to ensure that folks who were already at the company, as well as all the new joiners that we have and we bring on, know that first and foremost, they're wanted and valued, but also that they can be successful here. And I think that's really what ERGs are striving to achieve at their core. And that's something that I was really passionate about, and it's part of my leadership.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Casey. Clay, same direction of the question. Again, being a leader in this space is very rewarding, but I really want to know for you, what was it about being a leader, and are you still a leader? Are you still a leader in this space? And what was your path on how you got here?
Sure. So first of all, I am still a leader, and kind of to the opposite effect of what Casey shared, I kind of picked up the baton in 2020. And so I think we're all kind of on opposite ends here, which I think is a really great dynamic to have for this discussion for sure. I became interested in Amegy's ERG really not long after I came to the bank. I came here in 2016, only a few months after moving to Houston from New Orleans. And I was really impressed with Amegy's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the exposure that the BRGs were getting. And so really, I just wanted to know more about it and joined whenever I had an opportunity to. And about a year into it, I was asked by our previous chairs to take over our marketplace committee, and started chairing that committee as a calling officer and going out and kind of going to chamber events, things like that. And kind of in a sense, with using the figure of speech, I guess, fell in love with the chamber and all of the things that they do and their members and all of that. And then as I got more involved, I rolled up to the co-chair position in 2020, just in time for COVID-19. So it was an interesting time to kind of roll into a higher leadership role. And then in 2021, January 2021, I rolled into the chairman role. And so, and everything that I have seen so far in the last a year and a half leading our group as the top leader, everything I thought about DEI and Amegy's commitment to DEI holds true. And so it's been a really great experience for me to do this. And I'm extremely proud of the work that the bank does in DEI. And then for me personally, I have a lot of reasons that it's a personal endeavor for me. But I mean, I think it goes without saying, in a sense, growing up in South Louisiana, and it kind of carries through to Texas as well, to kind of Casey's earlier point. There are just lots of things that you go through and lots of challenges that you face. And mine has always been kind of like a yearning, I guess, for acceptance, because I didn't really have that growing up. And I grew up in a really religious household, and had great parents, great loving parents, but not necessarily accepting of the LGBTQ lifestyle. And so for me, having the opportunity to kind of flip that on its back at Amegy and show people that they can be accepted at the workplace and how that works, and making sure they're visible, they're heard, they're valued. I think that's what drives me to do it. And sometimes it feels like a second full-time job, but it's got such a personal spin to it that it doesn't always feel like work, because it's just so nice to intertwine the kind of my personal feelings for it alongside of what the mission of our group is. And so I've always been proud of that. And anytime somebody feels heard in our group, I feel like I've done my job. And so, I mean, that's just kind of my personal passion behind it, and my overall path to getting here. And I don't know when I'll roll off, because I just like it so much. I guess I like working that much.
No, you raised some very valid points. It is like a second job, but what motivates and keeps us motivated in this space is that passion for our personal why. And so thank you both for sharing your personal stories. And kudos again to Amegy for you even taking the step to acknowledge that they are talking about it and they're being about the actions that they set forth within the company structure. So again, thank you for sharing that. We're going to talk a little bit about advocacy. And so naturally, advocacy becomes a vital role for our ERG leaders. And so I want to talk a little bit about how you advocate internally within the organization and externally. And so Clay, I'm going to start with you this time. If you could just share with us a little bit about how you advocate as a leader in this space.
Sure. We advocate in so many different ways. And so I would say internally, anytime, as the chair, I speak on behalf of our group at all of our DEI meetings. I speak on behalf of our group anytime that any of our DEI initiatives are mentioned or put together. And when we're working through things outside of DEI, for example, we've been working through structuring a access to capital program at Amegy for underserved communities, and it specifically has a DEI angle to it. And there's been a lot of hard work on that. But one of the things that I had the opportunity to advocate for internally for that, which will kind of fold itself into external at some point, is making sure that LGBTQ is considered as an option in some of those categories whenever we're trying to identify who those underserved people and businesses are. And so that's kind of a good example of that. And fortunately, having the open ears of our executive leadership doesn't always make it challenging for that, because they're very open to listening to that feedback. And so another thing too, and kind of internally, we also, I mean, we really try to advocate for employees when it comes to growth, when it comes to kind of helping them navigate the workplace, whether it's through their management, whether it's through trying to understand new positions and new roles, and, you know, and kind of advocating for where they can bring a benefit to that, and how people who are within our community have a really interesting angle to add, an interesting value to add that a lot of others may not have. Because of things that we faced as people, maybe growing up, or things that we faced in the workplace at other organizations that have kind of empowered us and taught us a little bit more about how to communicate and how to deal with really complicated and sensitive situations. I also think, I mean, externally, we really try to do a lot, but it's really important to me as a person, but also to our BRG, to be extremely present in the community. The Houston LGBT community, and to do as much as we can, and to try to have Amegy's brand stretched as far as we can through the community to show that we support LGBTQ as a whole. And so whether it's Pride Fest, we're always a sponsor of Pride Fest, and we'll be again this year. And we show up actually as the only local bank at Houston's Pride Fest, which is really cool. And so it gives us an opportunity to support the community there. And showing up for the chamber events and hosting events here at Amegy Tower. We have a great facility here, and we've hosted lunch and learns. We've hosted, we did a donation drive at the end of 2021, and had the opportunity to not just we raised over $5,000 for a local charity that works within the LGBTQ community, but also got to pull in a local entertainer and drag queen from the LGBT community to come here to our headquarters and host a bingo to help drive donations. And so we were, you know, to me, that was supportive of our community by bringing in somebody from that community, allowing her to actually choose the charity that we donated to, and making sure that we were kind of, in a sense, putting our money where our mouth was and letting all of that happen together. And it was also super engaging within our employee network too at the bank. And so there are several others, but I think those are some of the high level, like, key areas, internal and external.
Yeah, those are very good points. Sponsorship plays a significant role in how you give back to the community. And so it's great to see that your company is doing that. Obviously, working in the nonprofit sector, they are in need, especially as an affinity, of being able to have companies to support their causes. So again, thank you, Clay. How about you, Casey? Can you tell us how your organization does internal and external advocacy support?
Yeah, so, you know, advocacy is really exciting in a lot of different ways. And so, you know, here at Google, I guess I should also clarify, you know, before the pandemic, we didn't necessarily have offices spread all throughout Texas, but now I'm realizing, you know, we do have an office in Houston, we have an office in San Antonio, we have an office in the Dallas area. And so whenever I talk about, you know, initiatives that are going on in Austin, we can also assume that this is Texas wide, since we are really looking at the Texas community as a whole. But yeah, you know, being the ERG leader at Google means that you do have a lot on your plate. You know, on any given day, I could be working with site leadership. I could be working with other employee resource groups to develop and promote and host intersectional events that can help shine light on current events and issues, or even just like having fun holidays that we'd like to enjoy and bring attention to. But, you know, so much of this work is this mix of coordinating between, you know, local employees and their needs, and the national and global initiatives to teach and create allies within the company. In terms of, you know, advocating really explicitly, you know, I think today is probably a good example of how we can advocate for our group externally. But most of the time, it's really looking for ways that we can provide aid or assistance to the local community. And so, this last month, we began really creating Stronger Ties Without Youth, in part due to Amplify Austin, which is a huge local fundraising drive for nonprofits in the greater Austin area. But sometimes groups just need your time or they need your knowledge. And so we're always looking for ways that we can provide that as well through either volunteering or just any other types of events that we can host that really benefit either local business leaders or just folks in the community at large. Internally, like I mentioned, it's really events. It can be newsletters, or what I think is really great is just talking, at the water cooler, so to speak, about what's really going on in a very organic way that, kind of makes being queer or acknowledging days like Transgender Day of Visibility a little less scary and taboo for our hetero friends and allies. And so I think those pieces are really important as we think about, how do we create an environment that is inclusive within the company where everyone feels empowered to show up and be themselves.
Very, very cool. I know that our resource group here at American Airlines, our Pride resource group here at American Airlines, is launching a campaign called Be Yourself, just to support that that motto of showing up authentically, being whoever you are, and the intersectionalities of all of that, right? So you can be queer, but you can be a Black queer, and so you can have a cultural representation that ties to that affinity as well. And so it's very good to hear that work that you're doing at Google. Let's stay within the community for a little bit. It's huge we're huge brand ambassadors in the ERG space, and the work that we do inside the company and outside of the company sets a tone for our brand and for the culture of the company. Can you talk a little bit about what it means to be a brand ambassador and what you're doing in the community? And you touched a little bit about it, but what that significance of being a brand ambassador really does for the company and the company culture.
Yeah,
I'm going to direct that at you, Casey, and then I'll go back to Clay.
Yeah, I kind of assumed that was going to be. Sorry, I just jumped right in. But yeah, so Google is pretty big. So we oftentimes are looking at how do we split this up amongst global initiatives. So Pride Month, we really look at what are we doing in all the different countries that we're where we have offices and where we're running business at. We can also kind of drill down a little bit and look at this from a statewide level within the US or on a city by city basis. But I mentioned earlier that we really do have these groups that are kind of embedded in the local communities, and we all roll up onto kind of like a national scale. There's a national ERG committee that also coordinates with the global ERG committees to understand, what should our marketing plan be for this year's Pride? But when it comes down to, how do we give back in meaningful ways to the local communities? That's something that we typically will go ahead and kind of empower the local organizations to really determine what that means and what the best way to show up should look like. So, we have things like google.org, and that is a really helpful way for us to kind of surface, nonprofits that we could donate a lot of money to, or have dedicated resources to help them build out, a new business model, or to help them really empower, the communities that they serve, that those nonprofits are serving. But, also in terms of, what does this mean from a branding perspective? It's really important that we understand that, we serve a variety of different users as a multinational conglomerate. And so it's really important for us to make sure that everyone feels represented, that everyone feels that what they're looking for, what they're searching for is available to them, and that they know that they can be welcomed, and that we're not discriminating against anyone based off of how they were born or who they are and who they love. And so that's super important to us. But yeah, I think for us on the local scale, I'm currently working with a few folks internally to really orchestrate a couple of days this year. And part of this is due, in part to the Austin LGBT Chamber as well. We're looking for a couple of ways that we can host things like workshops for small local companies, where we can have engineers show business owners how can we automate some of the more cumbersome parts of running a small business through free Google tools, or having things like job fairs within the local community to help folks understand, what opportunities are here at Google, and how can we get folks involved who may not have ever had exposure to this before. So yeah, there's a lot of great opportunities and ways to get involved.
Very good. Very nice, Casey. How about you, Clay? What does it mean to be a brand ambassador in this space for your organization, and kind of what does that do for the company culture?
I think it means several things, and I think that we do a lot to support that too. I mean, Amegy Bank is a key playing bank in the entire state of Texas. And so one of the things that we're always trying to do is get active in other markets, like where Casey is, or North Texas and DFW, and trying to kind of continue stretching to be, I guess you could say, the bank that isn't afraid to say that, hey, like, we welcome everybody as you are. We want to be able to understand you. We want to be able to work with you. And we want to be able to give you the resources that you need to be successful, whether you're a corporation, a family-owned business, and anything and everything in between, consumer, all of it. And so I think that at the end of the day, we really try to do a lot to empower employees to be able to have those conversations with people when they walk in, or when they call in, or when they run into them at a chamber event for another type of chamber, a community chamber or whatever. And so I think that we do a lot of work on that to make those resources available through our BRG, by opening up lines of communication for people to reach out to us to be able to get help with that when they need it. But also, I think a couple of things that we've done recently, one of our members actually helped with, she's in business banking, and tried to help with kind of revamping some of the language in some of our applications to be able to make spouse more of a like gender fluid term, so that when people, you know, if a man is married to a man, then those conversations are a little bit easier, and just trying to promote more education throughout the bank with what those conversations can look like to be more inclusive and to be a little easier. Hey, Javier. Welcome aboard.
Hi. Thank you.
I was like, hey, there's something else over here at the corner of my screen. But I think that we work really hard on those things. And for me, I mean, it's hard to put what it means into words, but it just feels really good to be out and about and to be meeting people. And when they hear the name of the bank, if they're out in if they're in our local LGBT community, they immediately say, oh my gosh, I see you guys everywhere. And so it just feels good to know that we're the people that kind of get looked upon in that's such a positive light whenever it comes to DEI period, but also for our community. And I think that has been something that I've realized over the last year and a half leading the group, is Amegy to kind of become synonymous in our community with like the bank where people want to be if they're LGBT, because they feel like they're important here.
Very nice, Clay. Thank you for that. Yeah, I see all the applause and the hearts going up. So I really appreciate all of the candor. Javier, thank you for joining us. We understand that you were having technical difficulties. So we adjusted, but we want to come back and give you the space to be able to elaborate on some of the questions that we were asked, that I've asked Clay and Casey. So I'm gonna take us back to the beginning for you. And if you could just provide us a little bit of an overview of your company's ERG, LGBTQ plus ERG, and let us know a little bit about how you guys engage in the community and what you are doing in that space.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me. It really is an honor for me to be able to represent Toyota, and of course to sit on this panel with Casey and with Clay. You know, I've got to tell you, so first of all, apologies for the technical difficulties. I was trying really, really hard, but here we are. So excited to be able to join and be able to share in this important discussion. You know, at Toyota, it was about 20 years ago when our employee resource group strategy really began, and when the program was launched, and it was actually our Latino, Latinx program that was first launched. It's called Todos, and that was 20 years, I guess 22 years ago now. And so soon thereafter, our LGBTQ plus program was launched, and at Toyota we call them BPGs, which stands for Business Partnering Group. And so again, fast forward 20 years, right, of having BPGs. At the time we started, like I said, with the Hispanic affinity, if you will. We then kind of grew into other areas. Today we have 12 different affinities represented through our ERG program, our BPG program, and 116 chapters across 20 different Toyota sites across North America. And of those, so total of 18,000 team members that are currently active in BPGs or ERGs. And specifically for the LGBTQ plus community, as you asked, it's called Spectrum, right? Because we all come in all kinds of different colors and flavors, right? And there's a little bit of everything for everyone. And so today I am proud to say that we've got 11 different chapters, 11 different Spectrum chapters across North America, and about 1,500 team members who either self-identify as members of the LGBTQ plus community or are allies. And so strong presence, of course, with our move to Texas, to the Dallas area, Plano, 5-6 years ago. We've had a chance to really shore up our efforts in this space in the state of Texas. And so we've brought a lot of ideas and really always looking for opportunities to connect with the community. So whether it be with Pride in Dallas, whether it be in McKinney, whether it be in Prosper, that I know they're having their event in person this year. We're excited for that. We're always looking for ways to connect, to give back, and not just the Pride piece of it, right? The celebration piece of it, but also identifying areas of need, right? So for example, the Dallas Resource Center, now just called the Resource Center, because it's really all of North Texas. They're a strong ally, and they're an organization that we partner with regularly, whether it be for their pantry, and providing hot meals to people who need it, or simply education programs. And then, the final piece that I'll say is, because of the scale of the company, and I know the same is true for Clay and Casey in terms of their organizations and the companies they represent, we do have those connections at the national level, right? And we support and partner with organizations like the Human Rights Campaign, for example, or the Trevor Project, just to name a few. And so being able to bring those resources, right, into Texas and being able to kind of deploy that in the community and across the community, that's been a huge success story as well.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Javier, for sharing with us the large landscape that Toyota has around the resource community, and in particularly all of the chapters that are represented with your LGBTQ plus community. You are still listed as the vice chair of Spectrum, correct? And can you tell us a little bit about how you got into that leadership role, and what was your path to taking on that responsibility?
That's a great question, because I'll be very honest with you. It was a tough decision for me to make at the time. When I think about it, hindsight 2020, I'm not sure what took so long for me to get as involved as I am today with our LGBTQ plus group, Spectrum. But I've been serving in this capacity for almost 2 years now. And I can tell you that there was a lot that went into my thought process when making the decision of standing up and waving the flag and saying, listen, I'm here, I'm queer, I'm proud. And it helps that I work for a company where, you feel accepted, right? And where this whole idea of being a member of the community is not foreign, right? We at Toyota, our two pillars are respect for people and continuous improvement, or Kaizen, which is a Japanese word for always trying to get better, always trying to do better. And so with that as the foundation, again, I'm not sure what took me so long, right? Because at the end of the day, I know I'm in a safe place, right? Like I know I'm cared for, I'm looked after, I am welcomed, I am embraced, I am empowered. So I think for me, it was more about my own insecurities, right? I'm thinking about, well, what about those executives who are looking at me and maybe are not as comfortable with the LGBTQ plus community, or don't really know if I should be promoted, right? Because in their mind, they're not so sure how they feel about it, whether it be because of their faith, whether it be because of their, own personal beliefs. I certainly respect that, and that's their, opinion and prerogative. But I'm here. I feel like I'm talented. I feel like I have a lot of value to offer. And so to be able to stand up and bring that to the table, right, and say, I want to sit at the table too, I want to be included, I feel a moral obligation to support my fellow Toyota employees, my fellow Toyota team members who are in the community and who maybe are not as comfortable with being able to come out at work and being able to share with others who they are, and really what it is that they can bring to the table as Toyota team members.
Yeah, that's outstanding, Javier. This work requires us to be bold. It requires us to be leaders and to lead by example in this space. And so kudos to you for being bold, being courageous enough to see the value in representing people that don't have a voice or don't feel like they have a safe space to show up authentically. And so again, I appreciate your commentary on that question. Before I shift back to regular rotation, now that we have you here, I do want to talk a little bit about how you show up as an advocate in this space, both internally within your organization and externally. What does advocacy mean to you in this space, and how do you show up?
I really think it begins with just being authentic, being yourself, right? So step one is you. Like, how can you ensure that you're being true to yourself, that you're bringing your best self to work every single day by being who you are, by being authentic. And I think for me, going back to your previous question, it's been an evolution. It didn't happen overnight, right? I wasn't 100% sure that I was ready to have a pride flag and wave it in front of everyone, because there was a lot of insecurity there, and there still is, right? I'll admit to that too. I still walk into a room, right, and I don't know who knows or who doesn't know, right? And just having that confidence and being comfortable in yourself and saying like, hey, if somebody is not okay with this, or if they have questions about it, it sounds like they have a problem, right? It's not my problem. And so just having that mentality and being able to slowly, and I want to make sure, because I know we have a lot of people on the line who are watching, who are in many different places in terms of their journey and their path. And so it doesn't happen overnight, right? You kind of grow your confidence over time, and it's okay to go through that process. It makes you stronger. It makes you who you are. And I think for me, the next phase of that evolution truly was to become not just an observer, right, on the sidelines, and not just be quote unquote an ally of my own community, but rather jump in and say, okay, now I'm going to speak up, and now I'm ready to start advocating at Toyota and in the community for my community, so that we can all kind of make that progress together as one.
Very, very good. Yeah, again, going back, it takes boldness to lead in this space. And all of you all have shown today through our conversation that you're bold, you're intentional about the outcomes that you're wanting for your community and for your organization. So I'm going to go back. We touched a little bit about leadership, the role of being a leader, but really leadership at the highest levels of the organization and what they mean. And so we have embraced this concept in the ERG space about executive sponsors and how they play a significant role in the success of our ERGs, especially in our affinity ERGs. And so can we talk a little bit about the roles of executive sponsors for your organization and what their value and contribution is to the success of the program? And so I'm going to start with you, Casey. On this one, we'll go to Clay, and then we'll come back to you, Javier.
Yeah. So executive sponsors are essential to making sure that employee resource groups are successful. I think I can't understate that enough. It is really, really important to make sure that you have folks who are in a seat of power, who are able to closely listen to the community of employees who are there at their company, hear their needs, or hear where current policies or workplace practices aren't meeting them where they need to be, and help to really push through meaningful change that can positively impact the workforce and our ability to really deliver our own work, not only within the company, but also to benefit everyone who may be using our products or who may be buying the things that we build. And so, yeah, for us, here at Google, it can be really flexible. And, part of this is just because, Google's really matrix and we have lots of local chapters. So to a degree, it depends on what we're working on. But, within a year, employee resource groups might interact with the global executive sponsor. They may work with local site leadership, who's responsible for the collection of local offices in that area, which typically is a smattering of like VPs and directors who kind of take responsibility for those day-to-day operations for that location. But also, like I mentioned earlier, there's regional Pride at ERG leads who are responsible for coordinating and steering the local chapters within the global region that they reside in. And so this is really helpful for us too, because it allows us to collectively express our needs that maybe aren't unique to a specific city or state or country. It allows for us to really have this unified perspective that we can then bring up to global leadership and talk about what are the changes that we would like to see across our entire platform of projects that we have. So, in terms of, what maybe is helpful for us to get from executive sponsors in order for us to be successful, I think some of that depends too a little bit on how we define success for ourselves as leaders. And so, for the chapters that we lead, for the individuals that we are doing all of this for, at the end of the day, I want to know that as a leader, I did everything that I could in my power to improve the experience or the well-being of the individuals in my chapter, whether that's through mentoring opportunities or influencing company leadership to steer the ship, so to speak, in a way that really works for everyone at the company and not just the few. So So maybe that means that, if you're an executive sponsor for an employee resource group, it doesn't have to necessarily be an LGBTQIA2+ employee resource group. But if you are, then you should really be ready to actively listen to people, to provide guidance and assistance navigating the issues that you can independently help with, while also influencing your peers to reconsider, policies that are part of the workplace, any workplace norms or culture norms that are going on, or really anything else that may be negatively impacting a group of employees who has historically been marginalized, and ensuring that they don't continue to be marginalized within the workplace. And so it's a lot of responsibility and a lot of power, but it also can be really empowering to be that executive sponsor, able to make those changes that are so positively impactful for so many people.
Very nice. Thank you, Casey, for sharing. How about you, Clay? Can you tell us a little bit about the role of executive sponsors for Amegy?
Yeah, so I think so kind of a lot of the things Casey said, our executive sponsors kind of have a similar role. We've had two with our group so far, and we've been really blessed in the fact that both of them have been incredibly supportive. At Amegy, I think the most important part with an executive sponsor is that they're an advocate, but also that they understand the objectives and the marginalization of our community when it comes to the workplace, and kind of where it's appropriate and how to kind of advocate for those things. We really rely heavily on our executive sponsor to kind of partner with us, whether it's trying to navigate through certain processes to make sure that people in our community and that work here at the bank are heard and valued, whether it's kind of helping us understand the complexities that kind of go on in the background that we may not be able to push something through if it's something that we want to get done, but maybe with the red tape isn't going to make that work. And so we rely on them like a liaison in that sense to kind of talk us through that and help us understand why, and help us understand how we can communicate that back to our group. Because sometimes things don't work the way that you want them to. And sometimes employees do come through with things that are really, really just not going to happen. And it's not because it's the bank not wanting to help. It's because there might be reasons for it that make perfect sense. And so sometimes our executive sponsors have done such a great job helping us kind of navigate those difficult situations. And I also feel like, ours kind of, we rely on them to be present, but also rely on them to kind of function in the background more and enable the chairs and the committees that we've already put together to be the face of the group and be the ones that lead the group. And so to me, an executive sponsor needs to be involved and needs to be engaged and interested and passionate about what we're doing. And our current sponsor, her name's Deb Smith, has been amazing as an ally and an advocate. And so having her as an ally, even as we kind of actually started more focused within our group this year on what allyship means and why we need allies and how can you be an ally and what does that look like? And so having an ally as an executive sponsor is kind of a great advantage with that, because she's a really powerful ally for us, whether it's in executive settings, whether it's just getting involved to kind of help us out with the right way to do something outside of executive settings. And so having that ear in our upper leadership has just been, you can't trade that for anything. And so I think that's kind of how we partner with ours. And we have a great relationship with the current sponsor and our previous sponsor. And we're really lucky that they've just both been such great allies and advocates for our group.
Yeah, no, that's phenomenal, Clay. And I'm glad that you touched on allyship. It's such a critical component to true inclusion, right? We talk about these affinity groups that are representative of a particular affinity, in this case, our LGBTQ+ community. But what the importance of is creating a space of inclusion for all. And those allies play a significant role in that. And our executive sponsors who play that role bring so much value from a different perspective, a different thought perspective. So thank you for sharing that. How about you, Javier? How about at Toyota? How do you all leverage your executive sponsors?
So you're speaking my language when you're talking about allies, because I will tell you a lot of the progress. Muted. Let's see. Still on mute? Testing 1, 2, 3.
You're good.
Okay. I had definitely pressed the button, so not sure what happened there, but I've been having technical problems all morning apparently. So no, nothing new there. So I was saying that, you're speaking my language when you're talking about allyship, because I would argue that a big part of the growth and the success that we've had with Spectrum at Toyota over the last 20 years has been on the shoulders of allies who are fierce fighters for equity, who get it, right? And who want to see a more equitable world and a more equitable Toyota. And so, in great part, it is because of them that we've achieved the success that we've achieved thus far. And so we try not to take that for granted. I mentioned earlier, we've got 11 different Spectrum chapters across North America. That means we've got 11 executive sponsors across North America. Each of those chapters has an executive assigned to them as a sponsor. And I will tell you, it's a mixed bag in terms of some of them are, they self-identify as members of the gay or queer community, and some do not. Some are pure allies that want to do the right thing and want to promote and support and really invest in our community. And I can tell you, I'm actually so proud. This week, we're actually hosting the Toyota HRC, so Human Rights Campaign Equality, Workplace Equality Summit at Toyota. And so we have sessions going on today. We had a fantastic session yesterday. It was a closed door session for executives only. And we had 300 executives show up to that session to talk about the gay and queer community, the LGBTQ plus community, to talk about, what are they comfortable with in terms of talking about, what are they not comfortable with, what questions do they have. We surveyed our membership to see what they wanted our executives to be talking about when it comes to our community. And we surveyed the executives prior to that meeting to really get a better understanding of where they're at, right? So we can go ahead and meet them where they're at. And I can tell you that the response was just incredible. In what we're doing is through education, trying to have more and more sponsors, right? So you've got your official sponsors who are maybe assigned to your ERG for the LGBTQ plus community, but you're also trying to build an army of advocates and allies who are willing to step in, right, as leaders, because at the end of the day, I truly believe that tone gets set at the top, right? So whatever your CEO is saying and however they're supporting or not supporting, right? Whatever they're not saying, all of that counts and all of that matters. And so to ensure that you've got all your executives lined up, right, in support of doing the right thing, I think it's so important that you continue to engage your leadership all the way at the top, and that you leverage those executives and or those sponsors to truly help you continue to move the needle within your organization.
Yeah, great stuff. And again, we got about 7 minutes before we have to wrap up, but that whole tie of executive sponsors and the oversight that they have to provide an evangelistic perspective to talk about the work of the ERG, to actually help support the business alignment of the ERG to the business. So they are very significant key players, and like you said, Casey, essential to the success of ERG. As we start to wrap up, there are 2 questions that we'll have in conclusion. So we'll take a few minutes to answer these 2, and then we'll take questions in the Q&A section. We'll start with you on this one, Clay. What advice would you give to employees or organizations that may have an interest in starting an ERG? What advice would you tell them about the foundation and how to get started in this space?
So as somebody who did not find and start our BRG, I did see this question when I got the questions to look over, and I did some homework and reached out to our 2 founding chairs to kind of ask for their feedback so that I don't lie to everybody when I speak on their behalf. And so first of all, and this really kind of falls into leading it now too, at the end of the day, just kind of having the fortitude to kind of steer everything. And I'm looking down at the list they gave me, just in case you see me looking down here at the desk. So one of the things they shared with me was to be open to any and all ideas, and to be able to hear people out, even when you're scared of what they may say to you. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're here for, is to hear people out right and to kind of understand where we can start steering and how to get things formed. And then also, don't be hesitant to ask for help, and to use your executive sponsors, which, I mean, that's an everyday practice for us now too, not just getting ramped up and started, and to use them as a resource as much as you can. And then one of the other bottom lines I got, and I feel like I look at this every time I'm doing anything with our group now too, is to remember your passion and your purpose, and not to get lost in all of the background noise whenever you're trying to get something started. And so those are kind of the things that I got from our founding chairs. And as somebody who's kind of picked up the baton and started walking forward, I would say on the longevity side of it, it's remembering your passion and purpose is incredibly important. And when that got brought up, that's one of the first things that resonated with me, is that, you know, these two chairs who started our group had the passion and purpose and never forgot what that meant to them. But then for me too, every time I do something with this group, and even if there's an overwhelming situation or something that feels a little discouraging, it's remembering where your passion is and remembering that it's important to have everybody feel heard and valued and important, and regardless of who they are. And so when I go to bed at night, I think that I feel like our group was started and continues moving successfully because we all kind of keep that at the foundation of what we do.
Thank you so much, Clay. How about you, Casey?
Yeah, this is such a great question. This is, going back a couple of years, this has been one of the things that I've worked pretty closely with the Austin LGBT Chamber of Commerce on. Is really like, how do you share advice with folks who are looking to start an employee resource group, and also how do you empower them to be successful with that? First and foremost, it's essentially you ask yourself, to Clay's point, why you want to start an ERG in the first place. And I would say too, it's really worthwhile to be conscious that, if you're a white cisgender man like myself, you should ask yourself who else might be interested in starting this ERG, and make a concerted good faith effort to engage them and bring them along to help navigate the process and ensure that their perspectives and needs are at the front and the center of the process. And then, on top of that, it never hurts to have more hands to help out and making sure that everyone is taken care of. So I think that's really essential in making sure that it's a very inclusive group from the start whenever you do go through this. Once you have done that and you kind of understand, like your reason why, who all you want to bring on board is really trying to take off on this. I would shamelessly plug the ERG Builders Box, which is, again, what I'd worked with the Austin LGBT Chamber on building. So this is a resource that I co-authored alongside several other incredible ERG and DE&I leaders here in Austin. But it's a comprehensive and free PDF that serves as a guide for starting an employee resource group. Whether it's an LGBTQIA resource group or if it's just a resource group for any other marginalized community, it is really focused on kind of covering the three main areas that we believe are essential to ensuring that your employee resource group is successful from the start. So, first and foremost, setting a mission and a vision for your employee resource group, engaging your members, and then really also communicating with C-suite members the return on an investment in employee resource group, both upfront and over time, what that means for the business. And so we really wanted folks to be able to just plug and play with this resource. So, it has a guide of questions that can assist you and your team on creating your mission and vision statements, which will really help to inform and properly scope what engagement with your community looks like. In addition to that, too, it even has things like pre-built surveys that allow you to monitor changes over time, that you can really showcase the impact of your employee resource group, such as changes in workplace happiness or anything else that you'd like to monitor. So you can actually find that at ergbuilderbox.com if you are interested. And again, it's completely free. There's no like hooks or gimmicks in this. Just like take advantage of it. We built it with the hopes that we could just benefit folks in companies all across Texas. So yeah, I definitely would recommend that if you're getting started.
Thank you so much, Casey. Thanks for the plug. How about you, Javier? Really quickly, for the sake of time, if you could just tell us a little bit.
No, you know what? I think Clay and Casey covered it. I think they did a great job. I would just say talk to your human resources group and find out what the policies are for ERGs so that you know what you're getting into before you launch your group. That's it.
Awesome. And I see Tammy has put in the link to the ERG Builder Box. So thank you very much, Tammy, for doing that so that we can all access that tool. We're going to now shift gears and go straight into the question and answer section. So Tony, I'm going to lean on you and your help to help me in facilitating this portion of our discussion. I'm going to now switch over also and start to look at the questions that we have.
Excellent. Well, thank you all very much. That was really great conversation. So the first question we have is, how much of your career pillars programs are driven by ERGs versus done in coordination with other ERGs?
Is there anyone that wants to take that question?
I'm happy to jump in. Can we clarify though? I think the question was around specifically which pillars. So is it for sort of how many events are you doing, or what are you supporting as an ERG, or how much of it are you doing in collaboration with other ERGs? Just to clarify.
Yeah, how much is driven by the ERG, and how much is done in collaboration with other ERGs?
Got it. No, duly noted. That makes sense. So for Spectrum, we have, and actually all ERGs at Toyota, there is what we call a Hoshin. It's literally, that's a Japanese word for planning documents or objectives. And it really is what guides our activities for the year. And so right now we just submitted our Hoshin to HR. That's again our strategy for the year with our objectives to human resources and the diversity and inclusion team this week. And essentially it includes everything we want to accomplish in the year. And it includes budget attached to it that we're requesting in support of the programs that we want to do. And for Spectrum, one of our objectives is actually collaboration across the entire company with other ERGs. And so especially harping in terms of intersectionalities, right? And trying to ensure that we foster those connections. And so we strive to do at least 1 or 2 events every month in partnership with another ERG. In fact, the next one is this Thursday, and we have Major General Smith, first woman to get to that level, to that rank within the US military, who happens to be LGBTQ, a woman, and obviously military. So we're partnering with all of those ERGs to have her come to Toyota and speak to our members.
Fantastic. It looks like we have another question. What best practices or initiatives are recommended for transitioning from an employee resource group to a business resource group? Is there anyone that wants to jump in on that question? Looks like Clay came off of mute. You were ready. Let's go.
I felt like I made that was an accident, but I'll take it and turn it into a blessing, I guess. I mean, we've never had an ERG, but I think coming from the angle of a BRG, I may be able to try to answer that question. I think overall, it's about taking the focus and being able to function alongside kind of how we have our committees put together, with having workplace, workforce, and marketplace, because there's a specific focus on different angles. And so you're focusing on what's going on in the workplace and within the environment at the bank, where I work at the bank, but also marketplace is getting out in the community and developing business. And so those are kind of, in my opinion, what has made it work for us as kind of almost a hybrid ERG, BRG layout. And so to me, you know, we rely on those committees very heavily to make that work, because at the end of the day, you need people in those committees that either work in those environments or understand those environments. And so, for example, in our marketplace committee, we don't put necessarily someone to chair that committee that does not already have a job that takes them out in the market. And so they're out developing business and kind of putting that together into itself and kind of one thing. And then people, you know, like our workforce committee, which focuses on recruitment and some other things, we have someone who's in HR or is a recruiter or has prior experience in that, leading that committee, to try to make sure that all of that makes sense, or somebody who's in learning and development in that committee to make sure that that kind of comes together. And then same with workplace, it's people that are kind of stretched within different areas. So I think it's about the people that you put into place and the types of subgroups that you put into place too, if you're looking to move from one to the other or blend it together.
Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit. I'll expand upon this from American Airlines perspective. Years ago, we were ERGs, and as we know, that's probably the industry terminology and best practices to call it an ERG. I've learned over the years that there are different forms of networks in this space. But what we decided to do at American Airlines is add the B to the name. So we are EBRGs, and you probably heard me mix that up as I was introducing our ERG conversation today. But we decided to add the B to our name to make an intentional focus aligned to the business objectives. So every year, our CEO states our company goals, our DEI leaders set forth the strategic initiatives to align to those goals, and we, through our resource groups, take intentional perspectives from the lens of the affinity to align to the business. And however that shows up, whether it's in the community, whether it's with our customers that we serve, whether it's with engagement inside of our culture of our company, but we have an intentional focus to align to our business objectives. And the support of doing that comes from top-down support. If we didn't have an understanding of what that was at the top, we wouldn't be able to align to that strategically. So the transition to me looks more like alignment to business objectives. If you are currently a resource group that's focusing on team member engagement, team member development, and team member volunteerism, then the shift of transition comes in when you actually start to be intentional about aligning to the business and the goals and the initiatives and structure that the company is looking to achieve. And so I hope that we were able to address and answer that too. So we got about 3 minutes. I do want to get last and final thoughts from all of our panelists. That looks like the last question in our chat. And so really quickly, Clay, if you have any final thoughts, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave with our audience today?
I would only say, I'm going to repeat what I said earlier that I saw people say in the chat. I think that any of these things are doable if you have the right executive sponsor, if you have passion and purpose, and you really believe in the causes of our community. And if you're passionate about leading a BRG, an ERG, an affinity group, or however it's labeled where you are now, or getting one started, if you love it and you're passionate about it, it doesn't matter how much work it is, because whenever you sit down and look back at it later, I'm sure our founding chairs look at this all the time and just look at how far our group has come since 2016, whenever it got started. And, I just think at the end of the day, if you're not passionate about it, it might not be for you. If you are passionate about it, then there's really no stopping you from being great. And you'll be surprised how many people are allies and how many people are interested once you get things moving and once you start communicating and getting the word out. And so leverage that and do everything you can with it, and utilize people like those of us on the panel today to help, because I would be more than happy to share any other insights, and I welcome anyone to reach out to me anytime, or to any of our prior chairs at Amegy. I would be happy to set people up. So utilize that too.
Thank you so much, Clay. How about you, Casey? And what are your last thoughts in representing Google?
Yeah, I mean, well, first and foremost, I just have to say thank you to the Texas LGBTQ Chambers of Commerce, but also specifically Tina Cannon at the Austin Chamber. I grew up in the state. I've been very lucky to get to call Austin home as an adult, and the work that Tina and her team does is just incredible for the Austin community as it rapidly grows. And so I want to first say, if you're in Austin and your company isn't already a chamber member, do it. It's so worth it. If you're in a different city and unsure about becoming a member, I also would still say, definitely take advantage of every opportunity the chamber can offer you, because there's so many great connections that you can make. There's so many great ways to get involved, and so many ways that it can really benefit your company. But second, I would just want to say too that, if you are an ERG leader or a committee member or an executive sponsor of an employee resource group, just thank you. It is hard work, but it is very worthwhile, and you're making the world a better place. Don't forget to lean on each other and be vulnerable about what's troubling you, so that y'all can work together to help find a solution. But also remember to be kind to each other. You never know what some folks have gone through just to show up as themselves for that day. And so I think taking that empathetic perspective as you go into the workplace and as you think about how you can give back to the community is super impactful and super helpful in making the world a better place.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much, Casey. How about you, Javier, and representing Toyota?
I once heard that in this world, there are things that are really difficult to understand from the outside, but they're also difficult to explain from the inside. And that's the kind of work that we do. And when we really go all in on supporting the community, in this case, through involvement with an ERG, some of my friends and colleagues tell me, are you crazy? Extra work, right? You're not getting paid extra, right? To support and be a leader of your LGBTQ plus ERG. However, I know that as hard as this is, as Casey just mentioned, it is good work, and it is a labor of love. It really is, because when I think back at our community, the history of our community, it is clear to me that the struggles were real. They're still real, and it's clear that we truly stand on the shoulders of giants who came before us and who fought the good fight. And so what a disservice would it be if today we didn't stand up and do the same and pay it forward to those generations that are coming after us. And so for me, final words, I would say, do it with passion, but also understand that it is a lasting legacy that will make a difference for so many lives. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about people. These are human beings, right? That just want to be loved and that want to love in return and that want to be happy. And if we can all do that, if we can just do a little bit, right, and add our contribution, I truly believe we're going to have a better world for all to live in.
Wow,
Preach,
fantastic.
Javier. I'm sorry, I had to speak up on that one. That was amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Of course.
That spoke to me very heavily.
Yes, passion, purpose, being kind, all strong perspectives and thoughts that we should leave with today. Thank you, Clay. Thank you, Casey. Thank you, Javier, for the work that you're doing within your companies, with your team members, and the work that you're doing within the community. I personally applaud you. I know that we applaud you as well. Thank you for being with us today, and I'm going to turn it over to Tony to close us out.
Thank you, Millicent, and thank you, Millicent, for doing such a terrific job with us. Special snaps to Javier for battling so hard to get in and do this work. So thank you all very much. This has been really, really a delightful conversation and incredibly enlightening. We're a small chamber, so we don't have an ERG within our chamber, but it's great to hear about the wonderful work that you all do and the passion that you all seem to have for it. So thank you all. We're going to take another little break now until 12, straight up 12 o'clock. So you have a little bit more than 15 minutes to, I guess, grab your lunch and throw it in a microwave or something, and then come back at 12 o'clock where we have our keynote, Imagine the Power of Belonging at Work with Rhodes Perry. I think no one is going to be disappointed. Anyone who attends this, you are going to absolutely love it. Rhodes is great. He's going to talk about his book, and then he has some great giveaways that everyone will participating will get as well. So with that, thank you all very much. Thank you, audience, for being here. And we will be back at 12 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you.